torrential downpour blanketed the city. The sound of rain tapping steadily against the glass windows of the Hawthorne Hotel, where Aisha Thompson, a 35-year-old Black American woman, was working the night shift. The front desk job was the only stable work she had enough to support her 10-year-old son Jamal, in a world that often viewed her through the lens of prejudice, a single Black mother working a service job. But in the stillness of the night shift, Aisha found space to breathe, to forget the judgmental stares and the mounting bills. She sat behind the reception desk, organizing paperwork for the next day, the soft amber light from the desk lamp casting a glow across her face, highlighting her deep brown eyes, eyes that held both resilience and fatigue. Though faded by time, the Hawthorne Hotel retained its charm, with old stone floors and vintage paintings hanging on the walls. Tonight, the atmosphere was quiet. The rain was her only companion. Suddenly, the main door burst open, ushering in a gust of cold wind and the louder roar of rain. Aisha looked up surprised to see a man entering near midnight. He was dressed in an expensive suit now, soaking wet. His blonde hair disheveled and plastered to his forehead, and his piercing blue eyes filled with sorrow, as if he were fleeing a ghostly nightmare. His steps were slow and heavy, like he carried an invisible burden. "Good evening," Aisha said, offering a professional smile, though her heart gave a subtle tremor at the strange presence of the man. "Welcome to the Hawthorne Hotel. Do you have a reservation?" He didn't return her smile, merely shook his head, his voice hoarse. "I need a room, right now." Water dripped from his coat onto the floor, forming small, shimmering puddles beneath the lights. Aisha nodded, maintaining composure, though instinct told her this man was anything but ordinary. "No problem, sir. How long will you be staying?" "I don't know," he replied, pulling out a credit card and placing it on the counter. "A week, maybe longer." Aisha glanced at the card and her heart skipped a beat. William Harper. The name was too familiar. William "Will" Harper, CEO of Harper Innovations. A white billionaire who built a tech empire from scratch, is frequently featured in business magazines. But the man standing before her didn't resemble those polished images. He was a shadow, gaunt, ghost-like, as if the light inside had been extinguished. She processed the information quickly, keeping her recognition to herself. As a Black woman in the service industry, Aisha had learned to stay silent to respect guests' privacy, especially when they seemed to be fleeing from themselves. "Would you prefer a garden or city view, Mr. Harper?" she asked evenly. He seemed caught off guard by the question, as if such choices no longer meant anything. "Whichever room has the fewest windows," he said, his voice low. Aisha nodded, selecting room 312, a quiet room at the end of the hall with only a small window overlooking the courtyard. "Room 312 will be suitable, sir. Very quiet." She handed him the key, and their fingers brushed by accident. His hand was ice cold. "Thank you," he said, his eyes glancing down at her name tag. "Aisha." The way he said her name slowly with meaning made her cheeks flush unexpectedly. "Is there anything else you need, Mr. Harper? Any luggage to be brought up?" He looked down at his empty hands, as if only realizing he had brought nothing with him. "No, nothing." He turned and walked toward the elevator, leaving a water trail across the stone floor. Aisha watched him go, her mind flooded with questions. What would bring someone like William Harper, a man with the world at his feet, to a mid-range hotel like the Hawthorne, without luggage, without a plan? She knew the business world was ruthless, but his eyes spoke of a more profound loss, a personal wound. None of her business, she reminded herself, returning to her work. But as she wiped away the droplets of water he had left behind, Aisha couldn't stop herself from wondering, what was this man running from? And why couldn't she stop thinking about those eyes? In the nights that followed, at the Hawthorne Hotel, Aisha's night shift rhythm began to shift with the quiet presence of William Harper. Around midnight, he would emerge from the elevator each night, his slow footsteps guiding him to the armchair near the unlit fireplace. He sat there motionless, his blue eyes staring into the void, as if searching for something long lost. Aisha watched from the front desk, her emotions swaying between curiosity and a strange, unspoken empathy. She had seen that look before in the mirror during the days after her husband passed away, when it felt like there was no room left in the world for hope. One night, when the rain had stopped, and the silence was so deep that the ticking clock became audible, Aisha broke the invisible wall. She brewed a cup of chamomile tea steam rising from the old porcelain mug and brought it over to Will. She said, "This helps you sleep better," placing the tea on the small table beside him. Will looked up surprised, as if he had forgotten she was there. He said nothing, but picked up the cup and took a small sip. Aisha smiled and returned to the desk, counting it as a small step forward. The next night she tried something different. She played a soft soul track. Nina Simone's voice filled the space, gentle yet profound. Will didn't react immediately, but Aisha noticed his shoulders loosen, as if the music had touched some hidden part of his soul. Eventually, he spoke, his voice still hoarse. "Do you like this kind of music?" Reading a business management book for her online course. Aisha looked up. "It makes me feel like I'm home," she replied. Will nodded, a small flicker of light appearing in his eyes. Home. That's a good word. From then on, brief conversations began. They talked about books. Aisha loved the novels of Toni Morrison, while Will mentioned Wuthering Heights with a hint of nostalgia. They spoke about small things, the flavor of tea, the weather, or the city's noise at dawn. One night, Aisha shared about Jamal, his passion for science, and how he built a solar panel model from recycled materials. "He's much smarter than I am," she said, her voice filled with pride but tinged with worry. "I fear I won't be able to give him everything he needs." Will listened, his gaze softening. "He's lucky to have you," he said, and the sincerity in his voice caught Aisha off guard. But Will still kept part of himself in the shadows. He didn't talk about why he was there, or what had turned him into someone so lost. Aisha didn't ask. She understood that sometimes silence is the only way to protect a heart that has been broken. Still, each night as he sat by the fireplace, and she brought him tea or offered a gentle word, Aisha felt an invisible thread forming between them. It was delicate, but strong enough to make her wonder, could she help him find his light again, or was she searching for it in him too? Part 3. A Secret Revealed. The night at the Hawthorne Hotel was draped in a thin mist, streetlights casting a hazy glow through the glass. Aisha sat behind the reception desk, a business management book in front of her. But her mind was elsewhere, thinking about William Harper and their fragmented conversations. He still came every night, sitting by the fireplace, and though the chamomile tea soul music and stories about Jamal had begun to draw him out of his shell, Aisha could still sense a pain he hadn't spoken aloud. She didn't press him, but the blend of curiosity and concern made it hard to focus. Suddenly the phone rang, breaking the silence. Aisha picked up, her voice softening as she recognized Jamal's number. "Mom, I dreamed about Dad." The boy's trembling voice came through the line. It was like he was there, and then he was gone. Aisha's heart clenched. It had been 6 years since her husband died in an accident. Yet Jamal's nightmares still returned from time to time, a reminder of the void that could never be filled. "It's okay, baby," she said gently. "Take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth." She guided Jamal through the breathing exercise, repeating the words she always used. "Daddy loved you so much, and would be so proud of you." As Jamal's breathing steadied, she hummed a lullaby until he drifted off, then hung up and quickly wiped away a tear rolling down her cheek. When she looked up, Aisha was startled to see Will standing close to the desk, his eyes focused on her, not judging, just quietly attentive. "Sorry," she said, embarrassed at being caught in such a private moment. Jamal sometimes dreams about his dad. Will didn't respond immediately but stepped closer and sat in the chair across the desk. "He said you talk to him like his soul is fragile, his voice hoarse and thick with emotion, like he matters." Aisha nodded, surprised by his insight. "Because he does matter." Silence filled the space, but it wasn't heavy. Then Will spoke again, his voice breaking. "I lost my wife, Laura, and my daughter Sophie a year ago. Plane crash." The words came out slowly, as if each syllable cost him something. "I was supposed to be on that flight, but a meeting kept me back." Aisha listened, her heart sinking. She knew that feeling, that ache for things that couldn't be undone. "I came here to hide," Will continued, eyes dropping to his hands. "But these nights with you, I feel alive again, even if it's just a little." Aisha took a deep breath as memories of her grief surged forward, those days of barely getting by after her husband's death. "When my husband passed, I thought I died too," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "But for Jamal, I learned to keep going. It's not easy, but every day I choose to live." Will looked up, meeting her eyes, and at that moment they were no longer guests and receptionists. They were two wounded souls who had found each other in the darkness. He said, "You're stronger than I am," a sad smile flickering across his lips. "You don't know that," Aisha replied, offering a small smile. She slid a freshly brewed cup of tea across the counter. "Drink this before it gets cold." Will picked up the cup, and as their fingers touched again, Aisha felt a warmth ripple through her. She knew from this moment forward, everything had changed. One weekend morning, golden sunlight stretched across the park near Aisha's home. She sat on a wooden bench, watching Jamal run across the grass, testing a homemade kite crafted from recycled plastic and braided string. The boy beamed every time the kite soared upward, but Aisha couldn't shake a lingering sense of worry. The late-night conversations with Will at the Hawthorne Hotel had become part of her life, but they also made her wonder, was she letting herself get too close to a world that wasn't hers? A world where invisible barriers could end up hurting both her and Jamal. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind sent Jamal's kite crashing near the walking path. Before Aisha could rise, a familiar figure bent down to pick it up. Will, dressed in a pale blue sweater and simple jeans, was curiously examining the kite's design. He said, "This structure's pretty impressive," handing the kite back to Jamal, his eyes lighting up as he recognized the boy. "Did you make this all by yourself?" Jamal nodded eagerly, explaining how he balanced the weight to help the kite fly higher. Aisha approached her, heart pounding. "Will, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice tinged with surprise and concern. "I was taking a walk," Will replied, smiling. "Then I stumbled upon a young inventor." He turned to Jamal, pointing at the kite's wing. "If you add a crossbar here, it'll be more stable. Want to try?" Jamal nodded enthusiastically, and the three of them sat on the grass together, using nearby string and wooden sticks to improve the kite. Laughter burst from Jamal as the newly modified kite flew higher than ever before, and Aisha couldn't deny the warmth she felt watching Will treat her son like a peer, not just a child. But later, as they had lunch at a small cafe near the park, Aisha noticed the curious glances from people around them. A couple whispered to each other, and another person glanced over as if sizing them up. She felt a familiar pressure, the scrutiny she often faced in spaces where she didn't quite belong. Will seemed unaware, still cheerfully chatting with Jamal about solar energy and science projects. But Aisha couldn't stop thinking. Was she pulling Jamal into a world where they would be judged for simply not fitting in? With his life of power and privilege, did he understand the obstacles she and Jamal encountered daily? When Jamal ran off to get ice cream, Aisha turned to Will, her voice low. Today was excellent, but I'm not sure I'm ready for things to get more complicated. Will tilted his head, his eyes serious. What do you mean? She took a deep breath, searching for the right words. Your life is different from mine, Will. Those look out there. They're not just at you. They're at me, at Jamal. I have to protect my son. Will was silent for a moment, as if weighing her words. I can't promise it'll be easy, he said, his voice earnest. But I want to try if you'll let me. Aisha didn't respond immediately, but when Jamal returned, holding 2 cones of ice cream and smiling brightly, she felt something shift in her heart. Maybe just for a moment she could believe in something bigger than fear. On Saturday morning, the Hawthorne Hotel was busier than usual, but Aisha felt a heavy tension in the air as she walked in for her day shift, getting ready for Jamal's science fair. In the past few days, she and Will had grown closer after meeting in the park, yet her unease about his world, with its judgmental stares and invisible barriers, still haunted her. As she organized paperwork at the front desk, a colleague handed her a business magazine. On the cover was a photo of Will entering the Hawthorne with the headline, Billionaire Harper hiding out in budget hotel. Aisha's heart sank. The privacy Will had sought had been shattered. That afternoon at Jamal's science fair, Aisha stood by her son's booth, where he proudly showcased his solar panel model. Will arrived, despite his busy schedule, wearing a simple button-up shirt that still carried an air of distinction. He listened attentively as Jamal explained his project, asking respectful questions that made the boy glow with pride. But their joy was short-lived when Aisha noticed a few people with cameras lingering nearby, snapping photos and whispering. She realized they weren't just targeting Will. They were also watching her and Jamal, as if their story was some scandal worth exploiting. She clenched her hands, forcing a smile for Jamal's sake. That evening at the hotel, Mrs. Evelyn Carter, the manager, called Aisha into her office. I've noticed you and Mr. Harper seem pretty close, Evelyn said sternly. But this article has drawn unwanted attention. Our hotel is built on discretion. Aisha felt a rush of heat. I didn't leak anything, she replied defensively. Evelyn raised a hand. I'm not saying you did, but this relationship could bring scrutiny on the hotel and you. Think about your son. People like Harper live in the spotlight. Are you ready for Jamal to be dragged into that? Her words cut like a blade. Aisha thought about Jamal, his dreams of becoming a scientist, the safety she had worked so hard to build around him. When she returned to the desk, she saw Will sitting in his usual seat near the fireplace, his eyes clouded with concern. I heard about the article, he said, his voice low. I never meant to drag you or Jamal into this mess. Aisha took a deep breath, her heart torn. I know you didn't mean to, she said. But your world isn't one Jamal and I can easily walk into it. Will looked at her, pain and determination mixed in his gaze. Give me a chance to make it right, he said. I can't promise to erase every problem, but I'll try my hardest. Aisha didn't answer, but when she handed him the familiar cup of chamomile tea, their fingers brushed, and she felt a spark of hope tangled with fear. From now on, she knew every step she took with Will would be a challenge, not just for her heart, but for the life she had so carefully built for Jamal. The night at the Hawthorne Hotel was so quiet that the wall clock ticking echoed through the air. Aisha stood behind the front desk, her gaze drifting over the open business management book. However recent events consumed her mind, the article about Will, the judgmental glances at Jamal's science fair, and Evelyn's warning. Though it had brought warmth, her relationship with Will now felt like a road fraught with thorns. She wanted to believe in him, but her fear of risking Jamal made her hesitate. Near midnight, the elevator chimed, and Will stepped out, wearing a gray sweater, his expression heavy but resolute. Instead of heading to the fireplace, he walked straight to the desk. "Aisha, can I talk to you?" he asked. "Somewhere private." His voice was low, almost pleading. Aisha hesitated. Leaving the desk would break protocol, but the sincerity in his eyes made her nod. "5 minutes," she said, leading him to a small corner behind the counter, where the dim lighting shielded them from prying eyes. Will breathed deeply, his hands clenched as if holding back emotion. "These nights here with you, with the tea, with the stories about Jamal, they've pulled me out of the dark," he began, his voice trembling. "After losing Laura and Sophie, I thought I didn't deserve happiness. But you make me want to try again. To live." Aisha felt her heart tighten, but she stayed silent, letting him continue. "I'm scared," he admitted, eyes lowered to the floor. "Afraid I'll hurt you. Or worse, hurt Jamal." Aisha took a deep breath, his words touching the same pain she once carried. "Well, I'm scared too," she said, her voice soft but steady. "You live in a world where Jamal and I don't belong. The articles, the stares, they won't just judge you. They'll judge us. I can't let my son be exposed to that." She paused, wrestling with the following words. "And if I let myself get closer to you, I'm afraid I'll just be a way for you to forget your pain, not someone you genuinely want." Will looked up, his gaze sharp yet tender. "Aisha, you're not an escape. You're the one who reminds me I can still feel hope." He stepped closer, his voice low. "I won't promise to erase all the difficulties, but I promise to stand beside you if you give me a chance." The space between them was charged with emotion, but Aisha stepped back, her hand brushing the counter as if to ground herself. "I need time," she said, her voice tight. "I would like to know if this is right for Jamal and me." Will nodded, his eyes filled with pain, but also respect. "I'll wait," he said. As she returned to the desk, Aisha felt her heart torn in two, caught between the longing to trust Will and the fear of a world that offered no mercy. The night at the Hawthorne Hotel was steeped in a heavy stillness, as if the air could sense Aisha's turmoil. After the emotional conversation with Will, her heart felt torn between hope and fear. Media attention was intensifying, and Evelyn's warnings about protecting Jamal echoed in her mind. She wanted to believe in Will's sincerity, but the pressure from the outside world made her hesitate. The next evening, while Aisha was at home, the phone rang. Mrs. Rodriguez, Jamal's babysitter, spoke in a panicked voice. "Aisha, there are people with cameras outside my house. They're asking about you and Mr. Harper." Aisha's heart pounded. She rushed to Mrs. Rodriguez's home and found Jamal sitting in the living room, his eyes filled with worry. "Mom, why are they taking pictures of me?" he asked. Aisha pulled him into a tight embrace, holding back her anger. "It's just a misunderstanding, sweetheart," though she knew deep down that the media had crossed the line. With no other option, Aisha called Will. Within half an hour, a black SUV appeared, and a woman introduced herself as Helen, head of Will's security team. She escorted Aisha and Jamal to Will's lakefront home. The house emerged from the darkness, modern, yet warm, with large glass windows overlooking the shimmering water. Will was waiting at the door, his expression tense with worry. He said, "I'm sorry for dragging you into this, ushering them inside." Jamal, curious, ran off to explore the dock, leaving Aisha and Will alone in the living room. Will placed a folder on the table. "This is the Harper Discovery Hub," he said, his voice full of passion. "A science center for kids like Jamal. He inspired it. Please run it." Aisha flipped through the plans lab's makerspaces, a library. Her eyes widened in amazement, but the excitement was quickly overshadowed by fear. "Will, I'm not sure I can step into your world," she said, trembling. "The reporters, this pressure. I'm afraid it'll hurt Jamal, and I'm scared your feelings are just a way to forget Laura and Sophie." Will looked at her, pain and resolve in his eyes. "Aisha, I won't pretend this will be easy, but I promise to protect you and Jamal." Aisha shook her head, tears falling silently. "I need time, Will, to know if this is truly safe for us." He nodded, though it was clear his heart was breaking. "I'll respect that," he said. When Aisha and Jamal left the next morning, she looked back at the lake house, knowing this decision would shape their future. She could only hope she was strong enough to choose what was right. 3 months had passed since the night Aisha asked for time and space, and her life had changed in ways she never imagined. She accepted the offer to lead the Harper Discovery Hub and moved into a more spacious apartment in a quiet neighborhood where Jamal had room to create. The new job was challenging, but fulfilling, allowing her to use her organizational skills and passion for helping children. Jamal flourished too, joining a science club and making friends with kids who shared his interests. But within Aisha, a hollow space remained, as if some of her had stayed behind on those late nights at the Hawthorne Hotel. She and Will maintained a professional relationship meeting in sessions about the center, with teams of architects and educators. Will was always courteous and respectful of the boundaries she had drawn, but his eyes, still deep and full of emotion, reminded Aisha of the chamomile teas and the stories that once bound them together. She tried to stay focused on her work, but the harsh online comments about their past relationship, though quieter now, still made her question whether she truly had the strength to step into his world. One evening, as Aisha was helping Jamal put the finishing touches on a solar-powered boat model, he suddenly spoke. "Mom, I miss Mr. Will," Jamal said, eyes fixed on the model, but his voice pensive. "He used to ask about my ideas, like they mattered." Aisha froze, her heart aching. "You liked him, didn't you?" she asked. Jamal nodded. "He made you laugh more. Why don't you talk to him anymore?" His question struck like a blade, forcing Aisha to confront her deepest fear, the fear of being hurt and judged by a world that wouldn't understand them. That night, after Jamal had gone to sleep, Aisha sat alone, flipping through a book Will had once given her. Their eyes were watching God. The inscription inside, written in blue ink, made her smile. For the late nights and the dreams. She realized she didn't just miss Will. She forgot who she was when she was with him. A version of herself that dared to hope. But could she overcome her fear and give them a chance? As moonlight spilled across the window, Aisha felt a flicker of resolve. Maybe it was time she faced her own heart. The lights shimmered in the grand ballroom of the city's most luxurious hotel, where the Harper Foundation's charity gala was underway. Aisha stepped inside, her deep blue gown hugging her figure, her hair cascading softly over her shoulders. She felt out of place among the dazzling guests, their curious eyes glancing her way, as if trying to place her in this world. Her purpose tonight was to speak about the Harper Discovery Hub, but her heart felt heavy thinking of Will. 3 months of distance had made her realize how deeply she missed him, their late-night conversations, his warm, steady gaze. She held a champagne glass more as a prop to mask her nerves when a familiar voice came from behind. "Aisha." She turned, her heart pounding, as she saw Will dashing in a tuxedo, his eyes lighting up at the sight of her. "You look stunning," he said, his voice deep and sincere. Aisha smiled, the familiarity between them easing some of her tension. "Thank you. This event is impressive." Will nodded and guided her through the crowd, introducing her to key donors. He praised her vision for the center, making her feel valued, but the curious glances from those around them still made her uneasy. After Aisha gave her speech, her voice ringing with passion about bringing science opportunities to children, the room erupted in warm applause. Will waited for her backstage, pride glowing in his smile. "You won them over," he said. They stepped onto the balcony, where moonlight blanketed the garden below in silver. The cool air helped Aisha relax. Will began, his voice low. "I've thought a lot about what you said, about your fear, about Laura and Sophie. I will always love them. But you make me see a new future." Aisha looked into his eyes, her heart trembling. "I missed you too," she confessed, her voice unsteady. "But I'm afraid, Will. Afraid your world will never accept me. That I'll end up hurting Jamal." Will took her hand, his fingers warm. "I can't promise it'll be easy, but I promise we'll face it together. You're not alone." In that moment, Aisha felt her fear melt away under the moonlight. She stepped closer, and when their lips met, in a gentle kiss, she knew they had found each other again, ready to move forward together. Autumn cast golden hues over the city, and Aisha felt her life had been renewed since the night of the gala. She and Will began to build their relationship carefully, gradually weaving into each other's lives. Will became a mentor to Jamal, spending hours in Aisha's small apartment, helping him refine his science projects, from the solar-powered boat to a homemade water filtration system. Their laughter filled the rooms, and Aisha couldn't deny her joy seeing Jamal glowing beside Will. She was also busy with the Harper Discovery Hub, where plans were taking shape, giving her a sense of purpose she had never known before. But not everything was smooth. One morning, as Aisha checked her email, a new article surfaced online with a cruel headline: "Billionaire Harper and the Receptionist, Love or Opportunity." The piece suggested Aisha was using Will to climb the social ladder and was filled with vicious comments about their mismatchedness. A surge of anger rose in Aisha, but more profound than that was fear. Fear that such words could hurt Jamal. She decided to talk openly with her son after school. "Jamal, what do you think about Mr. Will?" she asked as they sat together on the sofa. Jamal shrugged, his eyes bright. "He's cool, Mom. He listens to me, like Dad used to." His words moved Aisha deeply. She took his hand, her voice gentle. "Mr. Will and I are becoming close friends, but some people don't understand. Will you tell me if anyone says anything that makes you feel bad?" Jamal nodded, then added firmly, "They're wrong, Mom. Mr. Will makes you happy. I like that." Aisha pulled him into a tight hug, feeling relief and resolve. She wouldn't let cruel words dictate their future. That evening, when Will visited, Aisha showed him the article. His hands clenched and anger flashed in his eyes. "I'll take care of this," he said. But Aisha shook her head. "It's not just the press, Will. It's how the world sees us. I need to know we can get through that." Will looked at her, his voice steady. "Together we can." Aisha smiled, feeling a new surge of hope. They were building something real, and she was determined to protect it. The lake shimmered under the golden sunlight as Aisha stood on the dock at Will's house, where the groundbreaking ceremony for the Harper Discovery Hub had taken place just the day before. Jamal's laughter rang out from the lawn, where he and Will were testing a solar-powered model boat. Aisha smiled, her heart full, as she watched the bond between the two grow. Over the past months, Will had become an irreplaceable part of her and Jamal's lives, not just through science projects, but through the genuine care he showed them. As the sun set, painting the sky in vibrant orange, Will led Aisha inside, where a small dinner table had been set with candles and flowers. Jamal, exhausted after a long day, had fallen asleep on the living room couch, leaving the two of them in peaceful quiet. Will pulled an old book from his jacket pocket. Their eyes were watching God, and placed it in front of Aisha. This was Laura's favorite book. He said, his voice low. She wrote in it once that love is a journey worth taking. I want you to have it because you've given me a new journey. Aisha opened the book and read the handwritten note inside, feeling as if Laura offered her a blessing. Before she could speak, Will opened a small velvet box, revealing a simple ring with a sparkling diamond. Aisha, he began, his voice trembling with emotion. You and Jamal brought light back into my life. We've faced our share of challenges, but I want to spend the rest of my life building a family with you. Will you marry me? Tears welled up in Aisha's eyes, but she smiled, thinking of Jamal. I need to ask the little guy first, she said playfully. She called Jamal, and the sleepy boy came running. When he heard about the proposal, his eyes lit up. Mom, Mr. Will makes us happy. I say yes. He hugged them both tightly, and Aisha nodded, laughing through her tears. Then yes, I'll marry you. Will slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled them both into a warm embrace. Beneath the glow of the sunset, they felt a new beginning take shape, one where love and family rose above all past loss. Under the early winter sunlight by the lakeside, Aisha stood in a simple white wedding dress, her hand tightly clasped in Will's. Jamal, acting as best man, stood beside them, beaming as he handed over the rings. The small wedding occurred at the lake house, with only a few close friends and colleagues from the Harper Discovery Hub. The gentle sound of waves and the whispering wind felt like a blessing. When Will kissed Aisha, applause broke out, and Jamal jumped with joy, shouting, "We're a family." Aisha laughed, tears of happiness rolling down her cheeks, feeling a sense of completeness she once thought impossible. A few weeks later, the Harper Discovery Hub officially opened. The modern building, filled with bright laboratories and bustling makerspaces, rang with children's laughter, including Jamal, who proudly led his friends through every corner. Aisha, now the director, stood on stage, delivering a speech about the mission to bring scientific opportunity to every child. Will stood behind her, his eyes shining with pride. The Hawthorne Hotel, where their story had begun, hosted the first fundraising gala for the center, transforming the once faded lobby into a space with lights and flowers. After the guests had departed that night, Aisha stood in the Hawthorne lobby, remembering the rainy night when Will first walked in, worn down and lost. She reflected on their journey from chamomile tea and late-night conversations to facing judgmental stares and relentless media pressure. Every step had been a test of trust and resilience. But they had overcome it all, finding love and building a family and a legacy. Outside, Jamal and Will released a kite the boy had designed, soaring high into the night sky. Aisha stepped out and embraced them both, feeling the warmth of her new family. She looked up at the kite, dancing among the stars, a reminder that even the simplest moments, a cup of tea, a smile, a hand reaching out, can lead to something extraordinary. With Will and Jamal beside her, Aisha knew that no matter how painful the past had been, their future would shine with limitless possibility.